My daughter's boyfriend called me a coward who hides behind my wife until I showed him my Purple Heart and the combat scars I brought home from Afghanistan. Then he used his trust fund to sabotage my business and slash my daughter's tires. He even followed us at 3 a.m., taking pictures from his car. But my daughter secretly recorded him confessing to everything, his whole harassment campaign, and how he'd done this before to a teacher who gave him a bad grade. My daughter, Mia, thinks I'm the most embarrassing father alive. She's 17, and being seen with me in public apparently ranks just above public execution. Last month, she started dating this kid named Tyler. Classic high school tough guy, loud, arrogant, thinks he's bulletproof. My first impression of him was him pulling into our driveway in a BMW and laying on the horn like we were valet. The second he sat down for dinner, he started showing off, if you could even call it that. Bragging about his Call of Duty stats and how he planned to enlist in the Marines after graduation to become a real warrior. "I bet you've never even been in a real fight, Mr. Harris." He smirked at me, his tone dripping with that special kind of teenage cockiness that makes you want to gnaw wood. Mia groaned and rolled her eyes. "Tyler, my dad works with spreadsheets. He doesn't know Army stuff." But Tyler kept pushing. "Come on, Mr. H. Just admit it. You're scared of confrontation. I mean, look at you." He waved his hand dismissively at my polo shirt and worn jeans. "You probably duck behind your wife when someone honks at you in traffic." Then, he actually snapped his fingers at my wife, Laura, like she was staff. "Can I get some sparkling water? The imported stuff, what my family drinks." Laura gave me a sharp look across the table. She knew, but Mia didn't. We'd agreed a long time ago never to tell her about the past, about who I was before, about why we moved to this quiet little neighborhood when she was 2. "Tyler," I said quietly, cutting into my meatloaf, "maybe let's just eat." But he wasn't done. He got up and started doing half-baked martial arts moves he'd obviously picked up from YouTube. "See this? This is what real strength looks like, old man. Bet you couldn't even do 10 push-ups if your life depended on it." Mia's face turned crimson, not just from his antics, but from me sitting there, silent. Then Tyler noticed the little American flag pin on my keychain. "Ah, look at that. Mr. H supports the troops. Very patriotic for a desk jockey." Laura placed a hand gently on my arm. "Tyler, that's enough," she said, her voice calm but firm. But he kept going. "I'm gonna serve my country, unlike some people who wave flags and pretend they understand sacrifice." He gave a hollow laugh. "Anyway, not like I need to work my trust fund kicks in next year." Then he spotted my reading glasses on the side table. Picked them up, slid them on. He hunched his shoulders dramatically. "Look at me, I'm an accountant. I'm terrified of everything. Oh no, please don't make me do something brave, I might break a nail." The room went dead quiet. I stood up and walked slowly to the hall closet, reached past the winter coats, pulled out a wooden box I hadn't opened in 15 years. My hands were trembling a bit when I placed it on the table. "Dad, what is that?" Mia asked, her voice small. Inside was my dress blue uniform, the medals and ribbons still in perfect order. The Purple Heart shimmered under the chandelier light. Tyler's smug grin began to fade. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out my old dog tags, worn smooth by years of dust, sand, and blood. "You want to talk about real fights, Tyler?" I said, holding up a photo. It was me and my unit outside Kandahar, 2003. I pointed to myself, third from the left. Tyler looked like he'd seen a ghost. "See this scar?" I asked, rolling up my sleeve to reveal the old wound on my shoulder. IED hit our convoy on a supply run. 2 good men died that day, Reynolds and Vega. Both had families. Mia burst into tears, not from embarrassment, from something deeper. Tyler didn't apologize. He turned red not from shame, but fury. His fists clenched. "You just made a huge thing mistake," he hissed. Then he stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the glass. I watched him from the window, already in his car, already on the phone, calling someone. Mia didn't even seem to register the threat. She sat beside me on our old couch, something she hadn't done in over 3 years, and hugged me like she truly meant it. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she whispered through her tears. "All this time I thought you were just ordinary." I looked at my daughter. This incredible person Laura and I raised, she came into the world while I was still healing from wounds, both the ones you can see and the ones you can't. I wanted you to love me for who I am now, Mia, not for who I had to be back then. War changes people. In that moment, I was strangely grateful to Tyler, because the chaos he stirred had drawn us closer together as a family. But I had no idea he wasn't done, not by a long shot, and it wouldn't be long before he taught me just what secrets wealthy families are capable of hiding. I watched from the window as Tyler sat in his BMW for 20 minutes, furiously making call after call. His face was twisted with fury, gesturing toward our house as he spoke. The way he clenched his jaw, the way he slammed his fists against the steering wheel, this wasn't just teenage temper. This was something colder. Mia walked up behind me, still wiping tears from her eyes. She asked what Tyler meant by his threats, what kind of mistake I'd supposedly made. I downplayed it, told her Tyler was just embarrassed and needed time to cool off. Laura, sitting on the armrest, glanced at me with tight-lipped concern. She knew better. So did I. 3 days passed in uneasy silence. I started to hope that maybe Tyler had moved on, found another target for his bruised ego. Then the first tremor hit. My largest accounting client called for our usual monthly check-in. I'd worked with Mr. Langston for 8 years, but this time his voice was distant, flat. He mentioned they were reviewing all vendor relationships and would be in touch regarding next steps. Our calls normally lasted a full hour. This one ended in 5 minutes. The next sign came at school pickup. Parents I usually chatted with about school plays and weekend plans suddenly had other places to be. Conversations dried up the second I approached. Mrs. Patel, whose taxes I'd done since Mia was in first grade, actually crossed the parking lot to avoid walking past me. That evening, I broke one of my own rules. I confronted someone. I texted Tyler, "Whatever you're doing, stop." His reply came in seconds. "Just getting started, soldier boy." A week later, Laura got a call from the country club we'd belonged to for a decade. Our membership was being placed under review due to concerning reports. They wouldn't clarify what kind of reports or who submitted them. Only that the board would convene to discuss our standing. Mia came home that afternoon in tears, not the angry kind this time, but the helpless kind, the kind that break your heart. Tyler had been spreading stories at school, said I went psycho at dinner, claimed I threatened him with war stories, made himself look like the scared, respectful boyfriend of a girl with a mentally unstable father. And the other students were eating it up. That night, I decided to visit Tyler's house, thought maybe I could speak with his parents, try to set things right. But when I reached their gated neighborhood, the security guard, someone whose taxes I'd done the last 2 years, wouldn't even open the gate. He mumbled something about being placed on a do not admit list. I could see cameras shifting to follow my car as I sat there. The next morning, Tyler launched his social media campaign. Posts about unhinged military dads who couldn't handle their daughters dating more successful men. Photos of his BMW with smug captions about how success triggers the bitter. Every post was carefully framed, calculated to make him look like the calm one, and me like the unstable threat. Over the next week, 3 more of my accounting clients suddenly became unavailable for meetings. Calls went unreturned, emails unanswered. Payments that had never been late before started showing up weeks behind. Referrals I relied on to keep the business growing dried up. 15 years of honest, dedicated work bleeding out. Then one morning I found Mia's car in the high school parking lot. All 4 tires slashed, deep, deliberate cuts. Not road damage, this was personal. And somehow, the school's security cameras had malfunctioned during the exact hour it happened. No footage, no witnesses, no answers. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. A photo from Tyler. It was Mia's car. Her ruined tires. Accidents happen to people who disrespect important families. That same week, Laura's book club canceled their monthly meeting at our house. No explanations, just awkward last-minute excuses. Only Beth from church called. Quiet, almost whispering. She said she'd heard things, but didn't believe them. She told us she was praying for us. I sat in my office that night and started researching Tyler's family, digging through every public record, social tie, and financial link I could find. Trying to understand just what kind of power we were up against, what I discovered made my stomach sink. Tyler's father wasn't just wealthy, he was entrenched, a major investor in the bank that held our mortgage, a board member at Mia's school, partial owner of 3 large businesses and town companies that employed nearly half my remaining client base. The next day, Mia's guidance counselor called. Her voice was sticky with performative concern. She said she was worried that instability at home might affect Mia's college prospects. When I pressed her for details, she vaguely mentioned reports of concerning behavior, suggested Mia might benefit from therapy to process trauma from her home life. At the grocery store, I overheard whispers. "That's him," someone muttered behind me. "The unstable vet who threatened a teenager." I turned around to confront them, but they scattered like I was radioactive. Then Tyler made his next move, ingenious in its cruelty. He showed up at my office during the lunch rush, right when the reception area was filled with clients. Loudly, he declared he wanted to apologize and make peace. His tone was perfectly rehearsed. His words were honeyed, but his eyes were cold. When I stayed calm and professional, asking him to leave, he made sure everyone heard how mature he was trying to be while I came off as cold and unreasonable. After that, my receptionist began avoiding eye contact. A few days later, she mentioned she was looking at other opportunities. That night, Mia confronted me with screenshots from Tyler's latest posts. He had pivoted from bragging about video games to playing real-life Monopoly with people's lives. Turns out trust fund kids don't just collect beach houses, they collect reputations, jobs, and peace of mind. Post after post painted him as the innocent boyfriend of a teenage girl with a violent, unhinged father, a veteran with emotional baggage who couldn't let go of control. The comments were vicious. People I'd known for years believed him. For the first time, I saw doubt in my daughter's eyes. Then Tyler's mother called Laura. Mrs. Bennett's voice oozed phony concern as she delicately suggested that I get help for my obvious PTSD before someone got hurt. Laura hung up on her. But the damage was done. The storyline was spreading. My research into Tyler's family unearthed even more disturbing truths. His father owned the property management company overseeing half the commercial leases in town, sat on boards that approved business licenses. He had friends in places that could unravel careers with a handful of phone calls. Then the anonymous complaints started hitting the state licensing board, allegations of unprofessional behavior, claims of emotional instability affecting the quality of my work. Each one required detailed responses, documentation, and time I no longer had to spare. Meanwhile, Tyler was showing up at Mia's favorite cafe, timing it so her friends would see him acting sweet, concerned, supportive, always in the perfect lighting. He was rewriting history in real time, and Mia was stuck between versions of the truth. I started following him discreetly, trying to piece together what he was planning next. One afternoon, I watched him meet with a man outside a law office. They spoke for 20 minutes. Tyler pointed at paperwork while the man scribbled notes. It looked like he was hiring a private investigator. The final blow came when Laura received a letter, no return address. It included twisted details from my military records half-truths, distorted into threats. Warnings about signs of PTSD, patterns of aggression, risk to family and community. It was all calculated to paint me as a danger. I stood at our kitchen window that night, watching the street, heart thudding in my chest. Somewhere out there, a rich kid with no conscience and endless resources was systematically tearing down everything I'd built, my business, my name, my family's sense of safety. Laura stood beside me and slid her hand into mine. Upstairs, Mia was likely reading more of Tyler's lies online. We were under siege. And I was running out of options that wouldn't make me look like exactly what Tyler wanted people to believe I was. The war I thought I'd left behind in Afghanistan had followed me home. Only now the enemy wore designer shoes and fought with rumors and retweets, and I couldn't respond the way I was trained to. This time, I had to find another way. The next morning, I installed security cameras around the house. I worked through a light drizzle, tightening mounts and checking angles while Laura watched from inside. The technician walked me through the system how to view the feeds from my phone, adjust motion sensitivity, enable night vision. That very first night, the cameras caught something that made my blood run cold. A figure in dark clothing moved along the edge of our property at 3 a.m., pausing every few steps to snap photos of the house from different angles. Parked down the block was a BMW I recognized immediately. 2 days later, Mia's college interview with her dream school was canceled. The admissions office blamed a scheduling conflict, but when I pressed, they mentioned concerns about family dynamics possibly affecting academic consistency. That's when I discovered Tyler's father sat on the school's alumni board. The pieces fell into place with a sickening click. My surveillance of Tyler yielded more than I'd expected. I followed him to the country club where he claimed to be volunteering for service hours, a key part of his college application. He didn't lift a finger to help anyone. He spent 4 straight hours in the teen lounge playing video games. No service, no volunteering, just fabrication. I documented everything: photos, timestamps, notes. Tyler must have seen me, because within hours his social media accounts lit up. Posts about being stalked by his girlfriend's deranged father. One photo showed me in the background at the country club, cropped just enough to make it look like I was lurking. His caption spun a story about feeling unsafe, monitored by a mentally unstable veteran. His followers ate it up, calling for restraining orders, tagging local police departments, sharing posts with hashtags like #ProtectOurYouth. Back at home, the security cameras we'd installed began to reveal a pattern. Tyler's BMW passed our house multiple times each night. Sometimes it would slow, and a passenger would lean out the window to snap photos. Other times he just cruised past, headlights flashing across our living room. Even Mia noticed. She asked one evening why Tyler's car kept showing up on our street when he lived on the other side of town. The following Monday, Laura was called into Human Resources. Someone had sent an anonymous report expressing concern about potential workplace violence involving her husband. They said it was routine protocol, but Laura still had to sign a document acknowledging the meeting. After that, her supervisor grew colder. Where there had been warmth and trust, now there was distance. Then I found something that made my skin crawl. At the public library, I logged onto a terminal right after Tyler had used it. His browser history hadn't been cleared. He'd been researching military PTSD symptoms, searches like how to recognize signs of combat trauma and how to identify unstable veterans. He was studying me, not like a person, but like a specimen in a lab. He was building a case. Not to understand me, but to frame me. Even Mia's closest friend stopped returning her calls. Turns out Tyler had confided in her carefully edited screenshots of my texts, stripped of context, painted ordinary parental concern as controlling and aggressive. Bit by bit, her social circle turned against her. The poison had spread. Then came the escalation. I found Tyler waiting by my car after work. He sat casually on the hood, eating a sandwich like he was out for a picnic. When I approached, he smiled and commented about how accidents happen in parking lots, how cameras don't catch everything, and how insurance companies love ambiguity. He said all this with a smile while other people walked past, oblivious. But what chilled me more than the threats was what he said next. He brought up names from my old unit, soldiers I hadn't spoken to in years. He mentioned deployments, incidents, specific dates. His private investigator had been digging deep into sacred ground. The idea of Tyler twisting the legacy of fallen brothers into weapons made my hands tremble with rage. I had booked a therapy appointment, partly for support, partly to build documented evidence of my mental stability. Somehow, Mia's school counselor found out. She called to express concern that I was now seeking treatment, wondered aloud if this might reflect deeper psychological issues at home. It was a blatant violation of privacy. But proving how she knew? Impossible. Then Tyler orchestrated a scene at Mia's favorite restaurant. We'd just sat down as a family when he walked in, bouquet of flowers in hand, voice full of theatrical remorse. He approached our table, apologizing profusely for the misunderstanding. Every eye in the restaurant turned to us. He was the picture of contrition. I looked like the cold, angry father who wouldn't let go of a grudge. Mia burst into tears and fled to the restroom. Tyler left with a satisfied little smirk on his face. I later learned his private investigator had been busy. My old squad leader called to let me know someone had been reaching out asking questions about my temperament during deployment, pressing for any signs of aggression or instability. The caller framed it as concern for a veteran in crisis. Most of my former comrades hung up, but the seed had been planted. The doubt had spread. Laura confronted me a few nights later. I'd been spending hours combing through our security footage, making logs, tracking patterns. She asked if maybe, just maybe, I was seeing shadows that weren't there, if Tyler was really this dangerous or just a spoiled kid who had already moved on. For just a moment, I saw doubt flicker in Laura's eyes. The isolation campaign was working even on the person who had always been in my corner. Then came the next blow. A message from Tyler with a photo of Mia laughing with her friends at school. The attached note read simply, "She looks happier when you're not hovering." Maybe let her breathe for once, instead of suffocating her with paranoid delusions. The photo had clearly been taken from inside the school, somewhere he should have had no access to. And then something clicked, something that had been bothering me since that first dinner. Tyler's fluency in military lingo, his precise understanding of rank, protocol, deployment structures, things no video game could teach. It hit me like a punch to the chest. He'd researched me before he ever met Mia. This wasn't random. He had targeted her because of me. Laura was the first to spot the man across the street. She was in the front yard pulling weeds when she noticed him photographing our house. When she confronted him, he fumbled through a story about documenting architecture for a school project, but his hands shook, and the credentials he tried to show her didn't check out. He was a private investigator, hired apparently by concerned parents, who were worried about their children's proximity to a potentially unstable veteran. Then we finally got our smoking gun. At 3 a.m. on a quiet Tuesday, our new security system captured high-definition footage of Tyler climbing over our fence and rummaging through our recycling bin. He carefully pulled out medical records, shredded bank statements, anything that had personal information. His face was clear, full in frame, as he snapped photos with his phone and then meticulously put everything back. The next day, Mia saw something she was never meant to. While Tyler was distracted at school, she glimpsed his phone screen open to a folder of photos of our house. Each picture was labeled with notes: when lights went off, what time our cars usually left, which windows gave a clear view into which rooms. It was all laid out with chilling tactical detail. It made her physically ill. That was when she finally understood. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about a bad breakup. It was about obsession. I kept digging into Tyler's past. It took persistence, but eventually I reached a counselor from his former school who was willing to speak off the record. There had been a situation with a teacher. A poor grade, harassment, intimidation. Family lawyers got involved, and the teacher eventually resigned, rather than take on the Bennett family's legal machine. Tyler transferred schools with a clean slate. But the truth was darker. The former teacher agreed to meet me at a coffee shop in a neighboring town. She looked tired, older than her age. She told me how Tyler had wrecked her life, all because she wouldn't change a grade. He'd sent false complaints, manipulated emails and photos, started rumors that spread like wildfire. When she fought back, he escalated. His family's money turned every defense into a dead end. She lost her job, her reputation, and had to start over somewhere new. Tyler's pattern was emerging, terrifying in its precision. He chose targets who challenged him, authority figures who didn't bend. He studied them, identified pressure points, then launched a sequence of attacks designed to look like coincidences to anyone watching from the outside. The teacher said he had a particular fixation on people from military or law enforcement backgrounds, people used to structure and control. Mia found the final confirmation during a study group at Tyler's house. He stepped away to use the bathroom. She noticed a notebook sticking out from beneath some folders and opened it. Inside were pages upon pages of detailed plans, timelines of events, checklists, psychological targets, strategies for isolating each member of our family, contingency plans for how to respond if one of us went to the police, the school, the media. Mia's name appeared only once listed as the access point. A tool, a method for getting inside a military household. The illusion shattered. Tyler realized the notebook was gone within hours. His texts to Mia went from syrupy manipulation to barely restrained fury. He accused her of theft, threatened legal action, then claimed it was just fiction, a creative writing project for a psychology class. The speed with which he flipped between personas betrayed his desperation. Mia wasn't fooled. The next day at school, she returned the notebook, but not before photographing every single page. When Tyler tried to gaslight her, insisting I had planted it to break them up, she showed him the photos. His handwriting, his words, dates and events that had already taken place. His mask finally cracked in front of other students. The charm, the composure, gone in an instant. That night, Laura began rallying our neighbors. She shared the security footage of Tyler sneaking onto our property, digging through our trash, prowling in the dark. The clear video of Tyler trespassing and digging through our trash finally opened people's eyes. Mrs. Chan approached me at school pickup, visibly uncomfortable. She apologized for avoiding me, admitting that Tyler's mother had privately raised concerns about my mental stability that at the time had seemed convincing. But now the tide was beginning to turn. Working with the former teacher Tyler had previously targeted, I compiled a comprehensive timeline documenting his harassment patterns. 2 separate families, same tactics, same escalations when challenged. We were meticulous, logging every interaction, every threat, every manipulation. We were building a paper trail that couldn't be easily dismissed or rewritten. Her willingness to step forward despite what she'd already lost gave me a renewed sense of hope. Then Mia's best friend reached out. She apologized for going silent. After seeing the photos from Tyler's notebook shared by Mia, she admitted things had never sat right. Tyler had asked probing questions about our family before even officially meeting Mia. His interest hadn't been romantic, it had been strategic. In hindsight, the friend saw it clearly, the calculated way he inserted himself into Mia's life, into our home. Tyler's attempt to dismiss the notebook as a creative writing project quickly unraveled. Mia pointed out specific dates and detailed notes that aligned perfectly with real events. His research, his surveillance, the systematic breakdown of our lives, none of it could be explained away as fiction. Other students began to quietly distance themselves. They could see it now, the obsession, the precision, the darkness in his behavior. A buddy from my old unit confirmed what I suspected. The private investigator who contacted him had asked pointed, loaded questions, trying to frame a narrative about emotional instability and financial pressure. The caller understood military culture well enough to sound legitimate, but the intent behind the questions was clearly predatory. My friend had the foresight to record the conversation. Something felt off, and he trusted his instincts. Eventually, Tyler's parents agreed to a meeting. They arrived separately, his mother's expression tight with restrained fury, his father more interested in checking his phone than hearing us out. The meeting lasted 10 minutes. We showed them the video footage, the notebook, the patterns. They offered no apology, just a promise to handle things internally. Their concern was for their son's image, not the people he'd hurt. Then came the turning point. Mia broke up with Tyler publicly, in the middle of the school cafeteria. She stood up during lunch, held her phone high, and announced to everyone within earshot that Tyler had stalked and harassed her family. She showed the photos from his notebook, screenshots, dates, notes, every damning piece. Tyler tried to claim she was having a mental breakdown, that her father was abusive, that it was all some elaborate smear campaign. But his accusations rang hollow. The students had seen the truth for themselves. As word spread and evidence circulated, my business slowly began to recover. Mr. Langston called me personally to apologize. He admitted that Tyler's father had strongly suggested reevaluating our business relationship. Now, seeing what had really happened, he was ready to make it right. Other clients began reaching out as well, relieved to hear the truth and willing to come back. The bleeding had slowed. It would take months to repair the damage, but it was no longer getting worse. Tyler, meanwhile, was unraveling. He followed me to the grocery store one afternoon and loudly demanded I admit to being an unfit father. I stayed calm, kept walking. He didn't. His voice rose, his body language aggressive. Store employees noticed. Security came over. The entire incident was caught on the store's surveillance cameras. When the footage started circulating locally, the public's perception shifted fast. Tyler was clearly the aggressor, not the victim. The video showed him getting in my face while I tried to shop in peace. His social media narrative that he was being stalked and threatened collapsed in the face of hard evidence. The former teacher put me in touch with Mia's school counselor. She had initially viewed our family through the lens Tyler had shaped, but the teacher explained her own experience, how Tyler had weaponized systems to destroy reputations. The counselor began to question everything. Even the church pastor, who had led a youth group Tyler briefly attended, confirmed seeing troubling behavior manipulation, entitlement, subtle cruelty that others had dismissed. Tyler's online posts grew increasingly erratic. The polished image cracked. Friends who once defended him began to ask questions. Inconsistencies piled up. The more he posted, the more desperate he seemed. His carefully constructed image of victimhood collapsed under the weight of truth. The comment sections, once filled with support, turned skeptical, then critical, then silent. Finally, the country club called us. They apologized for putting our membership under review. They admitted they had received misleading information about a supposed incident involving me, an incident that security footage proved had never occurred. They reviewed the footage from the day Tyler claimed I'd threatened him there. It showed nothing. No confrontation, no threat. Just a young man spinning a lie and the beginning of a community finally starting to listen. The country club reinstated our membership without hesitation. Tyler made one final attempt to salvage his relationship with Mia. He waited outside the school gates and approached her with a familiar, rehearsed plea that he had only been trying to protect her from an unstable home. Maybe months ago, that performance would have worked, but not now. Mia saw through it all. She walked away without saying a word, and as she did, Tyler's mask of concern cracked into something sharper. His eyes burned with frustration he could no longer hide. Shortly after, Mia's college applications were reinstated. The university admissions office, having learned the truth about Tyler's interference campaign, apologized directly. They acknowledged they'd been misled by false reports of family crisis, and her guidance counselor, now fully aware of the situation, became her fiercest advocate. My business reputation rebounded, too. As the story of Tyler's coordinated harassment came to light, clients began returning. Some new ones even sought me out, impressed by how I'd faced such an onslaught without losing control or retaliating. The same community that had once quietly judged me now extended support, kindness, and understanding. Tyler's parents quietly transferred him to a private school in another district. The official reason? Better academic opportunities. But everyone knew the truth. They were pulling him out of a place where his image was permanently stained. I knew in my gut that his pattern would repeat elsewhere. But for us, the siege was over. I began dismantling a few of the security cameras, no longer needing to live like a man preparing for war. Mia started dating a kind, soft-spoken boy from her physics class, someone who actually listened when she talked and treated her with sincere respect. Laura's book club returned to our home. The laughter and conversation that had once gone silent now filled the living room again. Life, slowly but surely, returned to something close to normal. Mia was different, but not broken. She dove into college prep and reconnected with friends. Her resilience astonished me, the way she faced the trauma head-on, and how, even stronger, she used her story to help others. She spoke to younger girls at school, helping them spot manipulation and coercion in their own relationships. Then came the apologies. Whispers turned into spoken regret. Church members who once avoided us approached after services, admitting they'd been misled. Local business owners, some who had distanced themselves at the height of Tyler's campaign, acknowledged the pressure they'd been under from his family. Each conversation felt like one more stone lifted from our shoulders, but scars remained. They lingered in Laura's hesitant smile, in Mia's guardedness around new people, and in the subtle ways we all paused before letting ourselves feel safe. Therapy changed too. No longer about proving I wasn't unstable, it became about healing from what we'd endured. Our therapist noted how Tyler's campaign had forced long-overdue conversations between us. It had made us stronger. Mia joined me for a few sessions, working through how she'd been manipulated into becoming a weapon against her own family. For 2 blissfully quiet weeks, nothing happened. The security cameras still running showed nothing unusual. No passing BMW, no shadows loitering near our fence. Just kids on bikes, joggers, delivery trucks. Normal life. And yet, the silence almost felt suspicious. Laura suggested we plan a vacation to celebrate Mia's college acceptance and our survival. She spread brochures across the kitchen table, beaches, forests, mountain cabins. For the first time in years, Mia actually engaged in the conversation. We chose Colorado. Quiet. Far from Tyler's orbit. It felt like we could breathe again. But the morning Mia was scheduled to submit her final college paperwork, she found Tyler waiting outside her workplace. He was holding a massive bouquet of roses. Gone were the designer clothes. He wore faded jeans and a plain shirt, hair a little messier, demeanor carefully subdued. It screamed transformation, a calculated image of remorse. Her coworkers watched through the windows as he approached her car. Mia's hands shook as she texted me. I was there within minutes. The flowers were already drooping in the heat, but Tyler stood his ground, perfectly positioned to be seen, to appear composed and apologetic. When Mia rejected the gesture, clearly and firmly, he didn't back off. He got in his car and followed her all the way home. He kept a careful distance but made sure she noticed him in the rearview mirror. I intercepted him in our driveway before Mia could even get out of her vehicle. He immediately launched into a well-rehearsed monologue about seeking closure, taking responsibility, and making amends. Neighbors began to emerge from their homes, drawn by the commotion. To them, it may have looked like a calm, remorseful young man trying to reconcile, while I stood between him and my daughter like a stone wall. Tyler's calculated performance in our driveway was designed to make me look like the aggressor. And in some ways, it worked. For 20 agonizing minutes, he never raised his voice, never stepped out of line. He simply stood there with a bouquet in hand, speaking softly about personal growth, redemption, and second chances. Every word was tailored to make him look like the reformed young man, while I appeared rigid, bitter, unreasonably unyielding. Mia eventually stepped out of her car and walked right past him without even glancing in his direction. But the damage had already been done. By that evening, his return was the talk of the neighborhood. Some people began asking if we'd been too harsh. If maybe, just maybe, Tyler was a kid who had made mistakes and deserved forgiveness. The narrative he had tried so hard to establish months earlier had clawed its way back into circulation. Laura fielded phone calls from well-meaning acquaintances' friends, urging us to consider the possibility of his sincerity. Tyler's persistence escalated in ways that were subtle but unmistakable. He began showing up at Mia's workplace during her shifts, never breaking any laws, never stepping too close, but always there, always watching. He signed up to volunteer at the hospital where Mia's best friend worked. He joined the gym where I'd been a member for over a decade, smiling politely whenever our paths crossed. The confrontation I'd hoped to avoid finally arrived one evening. Tyler showed up at our door with his parents. Their luxury SUV blocked the driveway. His mother clutched a folder of legal-looking documents. His father stood back, taking it all in with the cold calculation I remembered from our last encounter. They said they wanted to discuss a peaceful resolution and agreement to end all accusations, in exchange for us accepting a formal apology. Mia watched from her bedroom window as I stood on our porch, unwavering. Tyler played the part of the humbled young man flawlessly. He even produced what he claimed were notes from therapy, describing his personal growth. His mother stressed how damaging continued conflict would be for everyone's reputations. His father, without ever saying the words outright, implied that their influence with Mia's chosen college could be exercised in ways that wouldn't look like retaliation. The meeting ended with Tyler making one final, calculated statement framed as concern for Mia's safety in what he called an unstable home. But his eyes, those cold, familiar eyes, told the truth his words tried to conceal. As they turned to leave, he looked directly up at Mia's window and smiled. Not the artificial smile he'd used for months, the old one. The cruel, knowing smirk. That night, Mia made her decision. She stayed up late researching wiretap laws, studying consent recording statutes, and outlining a plan I didn't fully understand. Her movements were methodical, focused, intentional. It reminded me of prepping for missions. When I asked what she was up to, she hugged me tight and whispered, "You taught me how to protect my family." 3 days later, Mia sent Tyler a text. She told him she was willing to hear him out one last time. She chose a public park, one with excellent acoustics and plenty of exit points. The attention to detail filled me with equal parts pride and dread. She wore a wire she'd ordered online and tested it multiple times before heading out. Nathan, her boyfriend, waited nearby as backup. I followed at a distance, staying out of sight as she approached the bench where Tyler was waiting. The transformation in his posture was immediate. As soon as he believed they were alone, the humility vanished. The sorrow evaporated. Smugness returned. Mia sat with precision angling herself for the best audio, eyes constantly aware of her surroundings. From where I watched, I saw the conversation stretch on for nearly 40 minutes. Tyler's gestures grew more animated. His voice sharpened. The cracks in his mask deepened by the minute. Mia stayed calm, nodding occasionally, holding her composure. Then, as she moved to leave, Tyler grabbed her wrist. Nathan started to move in, but Mia was already in control. She pulled free using a defensive technique I'd taught her years ago. Tyler hadn't expected resistance. He followed her across the park, his voice rising. I could hear him from my vantage point. Nathan stepped between them, stopping Tyler in his tracks. The moment of backup stunned him. He'd expected Mia alone, vulnerable. Instead, he was exposed. I reached them just as Tyler's composure fully shattered. He screamed, his tone shifting from wounded to furious. Park visitors paused to watch. He demanded Mia delete whatever she recorded, confirming exactly what we needed. He knew she was recording. He knew what he'd said was incriminating. And now, others had heard it too. The arrival of Tyler's parents only made things worse. His mother immediately launched into damage control, loudly accusing us of setting her son up, claiming we were a vindictive military family out to ruin a misunderstood young man. His father stood a few feet away, phone pressed to his ear, frantically contacting lawyers. Meanwhile, Tyler unraveled. Mia stood between Nathan and me, calm and unshaken. Her phone was gripped tightly in her hand, the recording already uploaded to cloud storage. She had learned from Tyler's own methods, always back up the evidence. The police arrived shortly after, called in by concerned park visitors who'd witnessed the scene unfold. Tyler switched personas instantly. He dropped back into his carefully rehearsed victim role, claiming he was being harassed and falsely accused. But too many people had seen the truth. Witnesses confirmed his aggressive behavior, the way he had grabbed Mia's wrist, the way he'd followed her when she tried to leave. The officers took statements from everyone. Their body cameras captured every moment, every shift in Tyler's demeanor. Then Mia played them key portions of the recording right in front of his parents. Tyler's voice rang out, clear and unmistakable. His confession about orchestrating the harassment campaign. His admission that Mia meant nothing to him beyond access to a military family he wanted to dismantle. He even bragged about slashing tires, about filing false complaints, about watching our house and manipulating public opinion. It was all there. His parents stood frozen. His mother's expression collapsed into horror. His father put down his phone and just listened. The revelation that Mia's family wasn't his first target, that the teacher he'd ruined was one of several hit them like a cold wave. They had enabled the pattern by refusing to see it. The weeks that followed brought swift, if partial, justice. Tyler was pulled from all local programs and sent to a therapeutic boarding school specializing in behavioral rehabilitation. The community learned about the recording, not through social media or press campaigns, but through first-hand accounts, eyewitnesses who had seen the mask slip. Mia refused interviews. She valued her privacy more than public vindication. My business made a full recovery. Clients who had once distanced themselves reached out, some offering apologies, others offering new contracts. The state licensing board dismissed every anonymous complaint after learning of Tyler's calculated smear campaign. Mia's college confirmed her acceptance remained unchanged. They even extended additional support, recognizing the trauma she had overcome. The country club, in a rare gesture of humility, waived our dues for the year as an apology for their prior judgment. Mia's strength had moved people. She started a peer support group at school, focused on identifying emotional manipulation and documenting abuse. She wasn't interested in sympathy. She was interested in equipping others. 3 girls came forward almost immediately, each with eerily similar experiences, entitled boys from powerful families using influence and subtle abuse to control and harm. While legal consequences for Tyler were minimal, his family's wealth shielding him, the social fallout was irreversible. His crafted persona was demolished. His parents sold their home and relocated to another state, seeking a clean slate where his name didn't carry the weight of disgrace. Reports from the reform school suggested he was engaging with therapy, though everyone remained cautiously skeptical. Our family emerged changed but whole. Laura returned to her routines with a quiet confidence. Mia prepared for college with hard-earned wisdom, having faced manipulation and conquered it with clarity and strength. The security cameras came down. Our home felt like a sanctuary again, not a fortress under siege. 6 months later, I stood in the driveway and watched Mia pack for college. My heart was full of mixed emotions. The girl who once rolled her eyes at everything I said had become a young woman who understood what it meant to stand against power and win. Her relationship with Nathan had blossomed into something rooted in respect, kindness, and safety, a far cry from the performance Tyler had put on. The morning she left, she hugged me longer than she had in years. "Thank you," she whispered, "for teaching me what real strength looks like, not fists or fury, but patience, and protecting the people you love the smart way." She had learned what some soldiers take decades to realize: some battles aren't fought with weapons. Some are fought with strategy, calm, and courage. Her confrontation in that park had done more than months of defensive posturing. It had exposed the truth. It had ended the war. Our story spread, not as gossip, but as both warning and encouragement. Other families dealing with similar private nightmares found hope in our survival. Even the teacher Tyler had once destroyed reached out, finally feeling seen and validated after years in the shadows. We couldn't undo what had been done, but we had turned our pain into protection for ourselves and for others, and that, I realized, was victory enough. Mia's peer support group continued long after she left for college, a lasting legacy of turning personal pain into meaningful action. Back home, I returned to my quiet life spreadsheets, tax filings, and the peaceful rhythm of routine. After everything, I felt a deep relief. The adrenaline of conflict belonged to the past, now both in the deserts of Afghanistan and the quiet war we'd fought here in our own neighborhood. Laura and I rediscovered the tranquility we'd once hoped for when we moved to this town 2 decades earlier. Yes, the war had followed me home, but we had faced it as a family, and we'd won. Looking back, Tyler had taught us some hard but necessary lessons, even if his intentions were cruel. He forced open conversations about my past that ultimately brought us closer. He revealed the depth of Mia's resilience, her sharp mind, and her unwavering sense of right and wrong. He exposed which neighbors and colleagues were truly allies, and which never had been. In trying to tear us down, he'd unintentionally fortified us. The last we heard of Tyler came through Mia's college roommate, whose cousin attended the same therapeutic boarding school. Apparently, Tyler had stopped targeting others. He was focused on graduating early and keeping a low profile. Whether that meant true growth or just another strategic pivot, only time would tell. What mattered most was that he was no longer our burden. Our family's story stands as a quiet reminder. Modern conflict doesn't always wear a uniform or arrive with a weapon. Sometimes the enemy spreads rumors instead of fire, uses influence instead of force. Sometimes the battlefield is a school parking lot, a boardroom, or a perfectly manicured country club, but the principles of survival remain the same. Protect your people, keep records, and when the time comes, know when to step back and let the next generation take the lead. Mia had proven herself a warrior in her own right. She had wielded intelligence, patience, and courage in a way brute strength never could. She fought and won on her own terms. And in doing so, she reminded me that real strength isn't about dominating others. It's about knowing when to stand your ground and when to trust those you've raised to take the fight forward.